If you know anything about the Japanese language, you probably know about the katakana alphabet. It is the alphabet that the Japanese language uses to express all the wonderful borrowed foreign words, many of which are English. And it is great. If you learn katakana, all of a sudden your vocabulary in Japanese expands by thousands of words. I am not even exaggerating here. So you're probably thinking to yourself, awesome, if I just learned katakana, there's already tons of Japanese words that I already understand.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
So if the almighty algorithm has brought you here, I am Sarah and I am a professional Japanese to English anime and game translator. I do what is called localizing, which means that I make sure that the translations sound good in the English language. They don't sound like they were translated. They don't sound like a robot did them. They sound like real English people, English-speaking Americans, speaking American English. Yep, I'm making a really good case for how good I am at languages. Anyway, the whole thing about localization is I make it sound like it was originally written in American English. That's what most agencies want, is American English. Sorry, UK folks. And most of what I translate is phone app games. I also translate some console games, but pretty much the common thread here is almost all the games I translate are story-based, and therefore there are characters with dialogue. And I often come across katakana words that are technically English words that I find myself more and more, the better I've gotten at translating and localizing over the years, the more I find myself not actually translating those words as you'd think you might translate them based off of what they are. And I notice a lot of amateur translators leave the katakana words alone. Like if it's a borrowed English word, they translate it as the English word. They don't bother expanding upon that and figuring out what it actually means in English. So I'm just going to give you a few real life examples from things that I either just have noticed a lot, or most of these I have just compiled from what I've actually been translating the last couple months. Most of what I've been translating recently are period pieces or high fantasy, so there hasn't been a lot of katakana, but recently gotten into some more contemporary stuff so I can give you some examples. So the first big one that I notice, I see this even from translators that are otherwise really good. I've been watching Carol and Tuesday, by the way. Great anime. Totally check it out. It's on Netflix. But I've noticed even that translator, which for the most part seems to be pretty good, is still making some of these novice mistakes. And one of them is translating shokku as shock, or I'm shocked. That is not correct. Okay, so shokku, you may think, okay, yeah, that's the borrowed word, shock, English. It sort of means that, but the thing is, the English language and other languages have synonyms. So our synonyms for shock include being surprised, and also sort of being like crushed, devastated. But for the most part, I would say if you're shocked about something, it means that you're surprised. It was totally out of the blue, something you were not expecting. And it's not always negative. You can be shocked, like, oh my God, my husband like decorated our apartment for Valentine's Day, and like there's violin players and there's like chocolate cake everywhere and candies and cards, and like he serenades me with an aria, and I'm just shocked to see this, like, oh my God. But I'm not devastated, and that's where the main difference is. Shokku in Japanese, it does kind of mean surprise. It does have that nuance a little bit, but more than anything else, it really means to be devastated, to be in shock about something, which is different. It doesn't simply mean to be surprised. And I see too often translators, even good ones, even myself, I'll catch myself doing this sometimes, translate it as I was shocked. Shokku datta. People translate that as I was shocked, but really, I was in shock sometimes works. Like if you're just like, you're so crushed, so devastated that you just can't, you're catatonic, you can't say anything. But really it means I was devastated, I was crushed. And that's not shokku. You might think it's shocked, but actually it's more like I was crushed, I was devastated. Gatsupozu. So I'm really happy that now Sailor Stars is finally being released in North America, like dubbed and subbed, and fans can finally see it because they get to see the wonderful sailors of the day when their star seeds are taken away. And there's a character, Sailor Guts. Hilarious. At the time when I first saw Sailor Moon through in the late 90s, dating myself here, I watched it in the original Japanese without subtitles because I got it bootlegged from the local Japanese video rental store. And as such, with only 1 year of high school Japanese, I had no idea. I heard him call himself Sailor Guts. My friends and I all thought that was ridiculously hilarious because in English, guts, it either means like your intestines or it means courage, pretty much. Those are kind of like the two meanings of guts. In Japanese, guts, it does not at all, gatsu does not at all mean intestines. So that nuance is completely out of the equation. So, you know, in English, if someone mentions, that takes guts, we still subliminally in our minds kind of envision intestines in addition to courage. But in Japanese, they do not have that intestine imagery with guts because gatsu, it doesn't mean that to them. It means courage to some extent, but it also means power, might, strength. Does not have that nuance really in the English language. And I would say, in fact, in Japanese, it has a stronger affiliation with power, strength, might, rather than courage. So Sailor Guts, for example, in that episode of Sailor Stars, it's not Sailor Guts as in like, Sailor Lower Intestine or Sailor Courage. It's more Sailor Power, Sailor Mighty. Sailor Jock, really, and that's kind of what he was. My fellow NES nerds, anyone play Mega Man? Mega Man 1, Guts Man? So yeah, Guts Man in Mega Man 1. My brother and I always had a laugh over that. Why is he Guts Man? Lower Intestine Man? Courage Man? Didn't really make sense, but the thing about Guts Man is he's powerful, he's strong, he's mighty. So that's more what guts is in Japanese, gatsu. So that brings us to guts pozu. Gatsu pozu, a much better translation of that in English rather than guts pose. We don't say that. We would say power pose, because what it really is something like this. Yeah, or yeah. And what would you call this? Would you call that a guts pose in English? No, you'd call that a power pose or a fist bump or flex or something like that, but it's not guts, not guts pose. So here's an example from something that I translated recently. 私は心の中でガッツポーズを決める. So literally translated, that would be, inside of my mind, I strike a guts pose. And even translated with power pose, inside of my mind, I strike a power pose. That kind of works, but I wound up localizing that as there's a victory parade going on in my head right now. Like the point of that is she's like, yes, like inside of her head. And I just wanted to express that. And I did a guts pose in my mind. Like we wouldn't say that. Main. So you might think that that's main, like main course, main event. And it does kind of mean that. It does technically mean main. However, it doesn't just mean main by itself. It means main event, main focus, usually main or primary focus of something. So I'd say focus is almost a better translation of main than main is. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of this. So an example from a game I translated recently, shitami ga main nan janai no. So shitami is like, it means like to go preview something, to go like look at something before you do something. The characters were basically scouting out locations for a project before they were going to go there to do the project. And as she was saying, shitami ga main nan janai no, it means that she was realizing in this moment, we're not only going on this vacation just to look for locations. Like there's some hidden agenda here. So you wouldn't say like location scouting isn't the main. Period. You might say location scouting isn't the main reason we're here or the main focus of this vacation. You could say something like that, but you would never just say main by itself. I think I didn't write down what I translated this as, but I think I might have translated as primary objective, because that's like literally what it means. Because that's not literally what it means. That is what it actually means. All you people who use literally when you should be saying figuratively are messing up my brain.
I am literally dying of embarrassment.
You know, I really wish you would look up the word literally, because...
Okay, now, here's another example. I got it from Chibi Maruko-chan, which is an amazing manga series. I love it so very much. Does not get enough credit. So it's from an episode where Maru-chan draws a barber giving somebody a haircut, and she gets an award for it at school, but the barber like had his back turned the whole time, and the customer was sort of like what the painting was like focused on. And this was the excerpt from it. She's thinking to herself, like, she's telling the barber about it, like, hey, that drawing I did of you, it got an award. And he's like, oh, like, did you draw me really well? Like, oji-san otokomae ni kaete kureta daro? Like, hey, you made me handsome, didn't you? And she's like, and in her head, she's like, kyaku ga main de oji-san wa ushiro muki da nante ienai. So kyaku is the customer. Kyaku ga main, there it is, main, de oji-san, the barber, ga ushiro muki, facing backwards, da nante ienai, like, I can't tell him that. So it's like, I can't tell him that his customer was main and he was facing backwards. So you wouldn't just say main, you would say, like, I can't tell him that his customer was the subject of the drawing. I wouldn't even necessarily say main. It's more, he was the subject of the drawing. He was the focus of the drawing, not you. So I don't even know if I would use main. I would only use it if I said like main focus in that instance. But yeah, main, not exactly main. Pesu. You have probably heard the expression my pesu. That's what this comes from, but they also have pace by itself, pesu. Usually like jibun no pesu, one's own pace. Doesn't actually mean pace though. So when you hear the phrase like at your own pace or your own pace or my pace, what comes to mind? I know what comes to mind. I'm going to answer that for you. It is your own speed, really. It's like your own, it's talking about your own individualized speed at which you do something, the rate at which you do something. But in Japanese, in this case, it doesn't actually mean the speed necessarily at which you do something. It means the way in which you do something. So if you hear the expression, this always comes up, like, kare wa itsumo mai pesu nano? Like, he is always my pace. That doesn't even make sense grammatically speaking. You're talking about him, not you. Like, kare wa itsumo mai pace, if you translated that, he is always my pace, that implies, oh, he always goes along with me, but it's actually the other way around. It basically means he calls the shots. It's always his way or the highway. That's kind of what that phrase means. And it is sort of like a bad thing in Japanese. Like that person is my pace. You're supposed to defer to the group. You're supposed to sort of sacrifice your own wants and needs to maintain social harmony. So to step out and be like, no, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to go at my own pace. If you really are talking about speed issues. But like I said, pesu is not always speed. It's way in which you do something. If you step out and do your own way, if you march to a different drum, you're kind of going against the group and you're hurting social harmony. So that's kind of a bad thing. So here's an excerpt from something I actually translated recently, changing the name of the character because NDAs are a bitch. All right. Itsumo Tamahome-san no pesu nano. Itsumo means always. Tamahome-san is the name of the guy that I just changed. No is a possessive. Pesu, so pace. Nano. So, and nano at the end is like you're explaining something. So I translated that as Tamahome always calls all the shots. Didn't have pace anywhere in the translation. If I were to translate that more literally, I would translate it as like, we always go at Tamahome's pace. And that's not like super, super wrong. I'm just saying that if I were to translate it as pace, you would think, oh, we do things at his speed. I want to take things slower. He wants to take things faster, or maybe it's the other way around. But it's really so much more than speed. It's just a methodology. It's the way somebody does everything. Free. So So you might think this is free, and it sort of is, depending on how you view relationships. But it means free as in unattached or single. It does not necessarily mean free as in like not incarcerated. So it pretty much always means single. So it's not really a good idea to translate it always as free, unless that's how you view relationships. So I had some more examples, but this video is already really long, and so I'm gonna end it there. Those are just some examples. There are so many more examples, but those are just some examples of why katakana is kind of your fake friend and why you should think twice before you translate them as you think they should be translated. Thank you to all of my lovely patrons for making videos like this one possible, and I'll see you in the next one.